everyone, my name's Lissa, and welcome to my little corner of BookTube. Today we're doing a book review and a follow-up from my previous video, which you can watch, I'll link it above. I am talking about The Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo or Leigh Bardugo, unsure which. First, we'll go through a little synopsis and then we'll go through my thoughts on the book. So, this book is about a man who is a leader of a gang, and he makes a deal with somebody to go on a heist to make a lot of money. And he brings along 5 other people, so it's a crew of 6, and things ensue. I am gonna leave it at that in case you want to go in pretty blind. It's got 4.47 stars on Goodreads out of 1 million ratings, which is really high. It's a YA fantasy novel, and now we're gonna go into my thoughts. So I used the CAWPILE method in order to rate this book. So we're gonna go through 7 categories and we're gonna talk about each of them and what my rating was, and then we're gonna go to the final rating. So the 7 categories are characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and enjoyment. So we're gonna start with the characters. I gave the characters a 7 because there are 6 main characters, and the ones that we got a lot of backstory on, I felt were really well developed, and we really got to see the motives and got to see the desires of the characters, and they were really fleshed out, and I really loved that. The reason I deducted 3 points were because there were other characters that were kind of neglected, and they were still main focuses of the story and the plot, and I didn't feel like they were as well developed as some of the other characters. I also deducted points because it took us a long time to even start to get to know the characters. Something that I'm gonna bring up a lot is the fact that it took a long time for us to get to know these characters. It wasn't until very well into the book that we started to get a lot of insight on the characters. It was very plot forward, very action driven, and I didn't really get to know them for a long time. And while some of them I was able to grasp onto and were fleshed out pretty well by the end of the book, there were others that were neglected when I believe that we had plenty of time to kind of weave that in, especially in the beginning of the book. And I would say with fantasy books, typically there's a lot of world building, and I respect that we need that beginning time to world build. However, it was more action and plot forward than it was world building because the magic system is very simple. And we got that world building, but it was very focused on action and plot, and I wish I got to know some of the characters a little more. So that's out of 7 because the characters that we did get to know, amazing, beautiful, well done. The next category was atmosphere. I also gave atmosphere a 7 because I thought the descriptions were very well done. I was able to imagine the world in my mind very easily. I felt I didn't have an issue with gaps in guessing the descriptions of where they were, the descriptions of the characters, both emotionally and physically. I didn't have to do a lot of guesswork, which is amazing. And so the atmosphere, the setting, it was all awesome. The reason I deducted a few points was because of the way that the description was written. It wasn't breathtaking. And that leads us into the writing category of the rating. I gave writing a 4. I wasn't blown away with the way that it was written. I thought that it was a little simple, and I understand that because it's a YA novel, but I've also read other YA novels that are very well written, very breathtakingly beautiful in the writing style. I felt it was a little simple, and there was nothing really that stood out to me about the writer's voice, and nothing that came to me as unique. So I gave it a 4. The plot, I gave a 9 because It was very action and plot forward book. I understood what was going on. It was exciting and it was unpredictable. When I think of good plots, I think of unpredictability. I don't like being like, oh, I know what's gonna happen. So because I was in the dark in the sense of I didn't know how it was gonna pan out, exactly the actions of the characters, I gave plot a 9. Intrigue, I gave a 2. For me, it was not a page turner. In my previous video, I discussed about possibly even DNFing the book, which is wild because it has a 4.47 star rating on Goodreads. I am still a little shocked that I didn't love it as much as other people did. It definitely took me at least 300 pages to want to keep reading, and that is too long for me. I finished it and I'm glad I did because there were definitely some magical, wonderful parts of this story that I'm glad I took away. However, I wouldn't say that it was intriguing to me. There was a lot of it that was filler, a lot of it that brought me to a headspace of not wanting to pick up the book, of not being excited to read. And that is a little unfortunate. So I gave Intrigue a 2. Logic, I gave a 9 because everything made sense. I think that what really helped this was that in a fantasy novel, sometimes there are things of the magic world that are very abstract and hard to grasp and sometimes blur the lines on that logic aspect. But because the fantasy world that it was set in was very simple, I would say that there were no gaps in knowledge, gaps in logic, gaps in the magic system. It was very fleshed out and very well done in that sense, and characters' motives made sense. It fit in line with everything. The reason I didn't give it a 10 was because at the end of the book, there is a character that does something that I don't feel necessarily fit the character's personality. I am not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil anything, but in a broad sense, this character did something very selfless. And from what I gathered from the character, this character leans more not selfish. However, I didn't get the impression that this character would do what they did. And so therefore I gave it a 9, but other than that, I felt like it was very logically solid. For enjoyment, I gave it a 3. It took me a long time to get to the point of wanting to keep reading. It took me 300 pages. And I genuinely didn't know if I was gonna finish the book or not. I was struggling with wanting to put it down. And the reason it is at a 3 and not a 0 is because it did pick up. I will give credit where credit is due, and that made it a lot more enjoyable for me. So it gets a 3. Overall, averaging out all of those scores, I'm left with 3.5 stars. I would recommend this book to people who really love action and plot forward stories. If you are really into character development like me, you have to be patient. It's there, but you have to be patient and you have to get there. So I would still recommend this book. I think it's a good read. It's not perfect by any means, and it's not my absolute favorite, but I know it's very popular, and there are good reasons why it's popular. So if it's a story that sounds like it would be up your alley, I would give it a shot. And those are my thoughts on Six of Crows. Thank you for joining me on this little book discussion, and I hope to see you next time.